Hi everyone, this is Brian Amrine from Value Driven Analytics coming to you today with several tips on prioritization. Now, prioritizing projects correctly is absolutely critical for an analyst because it determines what projects we work on. And we want to make sure that we're working on the need-to-knows that are really going to drive value compared to the nice-to-knows that don't necessarily change any decision at all. So how can we do that? Well, today I'm going to walk you through 3 prioritization techniques. First, we're going to talk about tracking all of your projects digitally. Next, we're going to talk about having regular meetings with your stakeholders to prioritize projects based on the value they could bring. And finally, we'll talk about when to take the time to say no, how to know when to say no. So let's get into our first one. It's really important to track all of your projects digitally. In the past, myself included, many others would have a notepad and we'd write things down and we might track projects that way. A lot of people still do that. Maybe there's a time and place for that, but at a certain point, you've got to have all of your projects tracked digitally. There are platforms like Asana, even a lot of people have access to Microsoft Planner. Set that up. Every task that's on your plate, even ones that you don't have time for right now. You might have an idea for a really good analysis that you can't work on this week. Write it down, make a task for it in Microsoft Planner or Asana so that you don't lose that idea, and when you do have time you can come back to it. Or maybe in your next stakeholder update you can bring it up and see if it makes sense to prioritize that project. So it's really good to have that digital tracking of tasks. Ultimately, you're going to want to be able to reprioritize those. And if you're writing everything down, you'd constantly be writing new lists potentially, or crossing out numbers. No, this is number 1 now. No, now it's number 2. Because priorities at organizations are always changing. So the list you have today, that ordering of projects could be different than what it is tomorrow. Now, don't worry, you still get the ability to check it off. It always feels good to click on a task and close it out, just like you'd cross it out on paper. But track your task digitally. And again, Asana, Microsoft Planner are great ways to do that. Now, my second recommendation, this is perhaps the most important one of the 3, is to have regular meetings with your stakeholders. I guess this assumes that you have a somewhat small list of stakeholders that you support. It's not that you'd maybe include everybody from those teams that you support, but perhaps the leaders of those teams that are determining what types of projects you're working on. I'm a big fan of the stakeholder model for this reason. It makes prioritization a lot easier. So sometimes analytics teams are set up as a centralized analytics team, and a person is working with sales one week, marketing the next week, operations. It's nice because you get to work on a variety of projects, but at the same time, trying to constantly prioritize among 3 different groups can be really tough. Versus if your organization at some level has said, sales gets 1 analyst, maybe 2 analysts, whatever makes sense, whatever that organization has decided to invest in each area, sales has 1 analyst. And so now the sales team, you get to decide what that sales analyst works on. Well, if you're in a model like that, I call that a stakeholder model. As a sales analyst, you should have regular updates with your stakeholder. Maybe you support sales and marketing, or sales and operations. Whatever it is, have a regular meeting with each of those stakeholders. In some cases, a lot of cases, it probably makes sense to have a weekly meeting, but in some cases, maybe it's just even every other week, at least monthly. But have a regular touch base with them. Now, what do you do in those touch bases? What do you do when you meet with your sales leader, for instance, if you're a sales analyst? Well, first thing you do is cover any updates from past projects. It could be an opportunity to provide a quick update on something you've been working on over the last week. And then it's also an opportunity to intake new projects. Now, sometimes they'll reach out via email or perhaps a Teams chat, but sometimes it's just really helpful to get on the same page in more of a live meeting. So you're taking in new projects. And this is the most important part. after you've gone over updates to past projects, there might still be some outstanding or some that you've deprioritized in the past. You've taken in the new projects that the team would like for you to look at. Now you've got to prioritize all of those. The ones that you deprioritized in the past, the ones that are ongoing, the new requests, you need to prioritize. And so it's somewhat on your stakeholder to tell you what is most important for them that you want to work on. And it's important to have regular meetings on this because priorities can easily change as new needs come up. So you're prioritizing. Now it's very important for your organization to drive as much value as possible with analytics that together you determine to prioritize the projects that have the most potential value, that are actually going to change decisions, the need to knows and not the nice to knows. There are some projects that come up, there are questions that might seem like an interesting question, but when you really think about what would I do differently if I knew the answer to that question versus if I didn't, there's nothing really that you would do differently, versus there's other things that are going to be critical to making a data-driven, good decision. Those are the things that need to be prioritized, especially the ones that could have a big impact depending on whether you made a bad or good decision, and the analysis is critical to figuring out what the right decision is. Those are the things you need to prioritize. And usually your stakeholder and the analyst are going to be aligned that, yeah, we want to work on the need to knows, the ones that are actually going to change decisions. So make sure if you're not meeting with your stakeholders on a regular basis today, that you do that. And the first topic of the first recommendation of tracking your tasks digitally goes along with that really well, because in those meetings, you can bring up your Asana list of tasks or your Microsoft Planner list of tasks, whatever platform you use for tracking these tasks digitally, and in real time you can share your screen and add new projects as they come up and rank them in the order that you align on with your stakeholder in a visual manner. It works so well. Now the last technique from a prioritization perspective is know when to say no. There are some requests that maybe feel like more nice to knows. They're probably not going to change a decision, and you really wonder why am I getting this request? Should this is really what I should be working on? Now, go back to our efficiency techniques video. We have a video on efficiency techniques. You don't want to be looking at those emails throughout the day, or it really will slow you down significantly. Save those for the morning when you check your emails, or the before you log off at the end of the day. Don't look at your emails throughout the day. It's a good efficiency technique. But know when to push back. If there is a request that's just going to take you a minute or two, it'll probably be quicker for you to just go ahead and do that request, even though technically it's more of a nice to know than a need to know. Then the 10, 30 minutes, you might have to schedule an entire meeting to explain why that 1 to 2 minute request was just a nice to know. Now, if it's a big project that's going to take up a lot of your time, yeah, that's worth a conversation. And going back to our second recommendation, that's a really good place to have that conversation is in those prioritization meetings that you've set up on a regular basis. But if it's a quick request, sometimes it just makes sense to go ahead and do that. Now, if you get those over and over and it's a recurring similar type of request that really probably you shouldn't be investing in, then maybe it makes sense to have a conversation with your stakeholders about that. I'm getting this over and over. It's not taking me a lot of time, but in aggregate, it adds up, and is this really something we want to continue to do on a regular basis? So if it's a recurring thing, that's different. But every now and then, if you get an ad hoc request for something that's going to be really quick to do, think about whether it's worth it to really to push back. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Now, another thing you could do in a situation like that is create a reusable asset. If you're getting this request on a regular basis, maybe it makes sense to invest in a reusable asset. But again, balance that with the opportunity to work on more value-driven projects. I'll say this, I would definitely recommend watching our efficiency video, because sometimes just being really efficient with things solves prioritization challenges. Some people seem to enjoy the back and forth, the argument, so to speak, about what should be prioritized. I do not enjoy that, but there is sometimes a need to have that conversation. So one way to avoid that altogether is just to be really efficient, and so that when you get some quick requests that might be more nice to knows, you're just able to resolve them pretty quickly and get people what they want. It's a good customer experience to be able to get what you want quickly, and really mainly push back when it's going to be a project that's going to take a significant amount of time. I hope those techniques were helpful. It's really important to prioritize the right projects, because that's what determines what an analyst work on, and therefore how much value you can drive. In the very first prioritization tip I provided today, I talked about how important it is to track tasks digitally. And one of the tools you can do that in is Microsoft Planner. Now, this is included in a lot of organizations' Microsoft licenses, so it's very likely you may already have access to it. So I wanted to do a quick walkthrough of how you could use this in a prioritization meeting and to track your tasks digitally. So first thing you'd want to do, if you're in Office 365 in the top left corner here, click on this and you may already see Planner right here. If so, click on that, or you might need to explore all your apps and then choose Planner. Once you're in Planner, you'll see something like this. You'll want to create a new plan by clicking on New Plan. I'll do a new blank plan. There are some templates here. Sample plan. You can add it to an existing group if you'd like. I'll just say create. There we are, we've got a sample plan. Now there's so much you can do with this. I'm just going to show you the surface level things and how you might use it in a prioritization meeting with your stakeholders. So by default, it creates a to-do bucket here. Now you can rename this here. Maybe you want to call it task. Just click right in there and name it the task. And you can have different buckets. So what you might do is, say you support some sales stakeholders. These are your sales projects. You might have another bucket for operations projects. However you want to do it. There's a lot of organization levels here. The first thing we might do is have a task. So say work on sales report. And you can assign a person to it if you're working with multiple people, maybe your entire team. Maybe you're collaborating on some projects. You can assign people to that project. You can also set a due date for that. I'm going to add this task. Now it's right here, and if I want to add even more information, I can click on this task. There are all kinds of things you can put on here. So let's see, we might, pink for instance, we'll call this a reporting task. Maybe we want to be able to sort by reporting versus data science versus analysis task. We might use labels for that. Or you could have a column with your sales and operations projects. Let's try that. I'll say pink is sales, and then let's try that again. Sales. Okay, don't press enter. And then we'll do yellow for operations. There we go. So now when I try to search for a label, I can designate this as sales project. By the way, you can put checklist items so that you can check them off. First thing I need to do is import data. Then after that, I need to build visualization. And after that, I need to meet with stakeholders. Great. Now I'm going to click out of this, and there you go. You actually have your subtask right there underneath your task. So if I've imported data, quickly check on that. You get that satisfaction that you get even in a notebook crossing something off. You can do that digitally in a tool like Microsoft Planner. So there's our work on sales report. Let's say I also have an operations project. Work on operations report. And we'll just add the task there. Now what I can do here, I can quickly do this from the top right even, assign a label, operations. Now we have one task. Maybe now we'll just call this, call it Brian's tasks. We don't even need this bucket anymore. There you go, I've got 2 tasks here. What's nice about this is now I go into a stakeholder meeting with sales or operations. Maybe occasionally, it just depends on the context, but maybe it makes sense to have a combined stakeholder meeting at times, especially if you think that some of the things that you're talking about with operations could benefit sales and vice versa. But most of the time you probably want to have distinct meetings with each one of your stakeholders individually. But now you're going into a meeting, and the first thing you might do is give an update if we're talking with sales of, hey, here's how the work on the sales report's coming along. Now let me open this up. What I've done over the last week is I've imported the data. I still need to build the visualization, meet with stakeholders, and this is the due date. So you might populate this with a particular date. Great, okay, we've provided updates. There might be other projects as well that you're giving updates on. And then comes the portion of the meeting where you might ask them what any new projects they might have for you. You say, yeah, we need a sales model build. So you say, all right, let's add that. When do you think you need that by? Oh, we need it by the 29th. Okay, well, I don't think it might take a little bit longer. Okay, how long will it take? All right, it'll take till October 6th. Great, we're aligned. So now you add that project, there you go, and you've got it there. Let's assign it to sales. And now if you didn't want them to see the operations project, sometimes you might, to let them know, well, I do have this other stakeholder that I'm also responsible for, and I am working on this project for them. So that they know everything on your plate. That can be helpful. But if you did just want to filter down to sales projects, you can use tons and tons of filters here. Now one of the filters is based on label, and you can filter on either sales or operations, any of the labels that you've used so far. So I'll click on sales here, and there you go. We're just seeing the sales projects. Now in this case, there's 2 projects. It's probably not relevant what we're about to do. But then the last thing you might do in that meeting is say, okay, we've got a few projects this week. We've got finishing up our sales report, and we've got this new sales model build. Which project is most important to you? Let's rank these. And they might say, well, yeah, the sales model build's good, but we really need to work on and finish that sales report first. That's absolutely critical for our team. So now you can simply pick this up and drag it to the top and align on the priorities. Very simple example, but this works so well. So you schedule that prioritization meeting with your stakeholders on a weekly or every other week, monthly basis, and you bring this task list up, and you've got all your tasks there. You align on prioritization, and I'm telling you, it'll help your prioritization so much and ultimately help you prioritize the highest value projects. I want to thank you for watching today. I hope you got a lot out of it. And if you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future. Now, if you have any questions about what we covered, please consider leaving a comment, and I'll try to respond to it as soon as I can. One last thing, if you or your organization ever need anything analytics related, an analysis, a dashboard build, maybe a data science model build, perhaps deeper training on this very topic or other analytics topics, even a complete analytics transformation, please consider Value-Driven Analytics. Check out our site at valuedrivenanalytics.com, and if it resonates with you, give us a call. We'd love to help you out.